Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Brandon Williams and I represent the people of the state of California. Today, you heard that Dana Dane attended the annual Halloween party at the home of the defendant, Alexis Toklas. Every year at this party, a special drink is handed out as a prank. However, this year, the defendant had an argument with Dana. Shortly around midnight, Dana was found dead after drinking the cup with Rufinol. Dana died as a result of the defendant's conscious disregard for human life, which turned this Halloween tradition deadly. The evidence has proven that the defendant disliked Dana and had an argument with Dana. Members of the jury, after listening to the judge's instruction on the law and hearing all of the evidence today, the people are confident that you will find the defendant, Alexis Toklas, guilty of the following crimes. The people have charged the defendant with 3 crimes: voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and illegal administration of a controlled substance. In order for us, the people, to prove count 1, voluntary manslaughter, we must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following 4 elements. 1, that the defendant intentionally committed an act that caused the death of another person. 2, the natural consequences of the act were dangerous to human life. 3, at the time she acted, the defendant knew that the act was dangerous to human life. And 4, the defendant acted deliberately and with a conscious disregard for human life. To prove the first element, that the defendant intentionally committed an act that caused the death of another person, you have heard from Officer Nelson that he found 3 critical pieces of evidence in the defendant's bedroom. The first piece of evidence is the Grim Reaper mask, which later tested for DNA, matched the DNA of whom? The defendant, Alexis Toklas. The second and most critical piece of evidence is the bottle of pills. Exhibit number 1 shows that the only fingerprints on the bottle of pills belong to the defendant, Alexis Toklas. Exhibit number 1 also shows that the cup with Rufinol was held by Dana Dane, Drew Coker, and the defendant, Alexis Toklas. The third and final piece of evidence is the computer screen found on the defendant's computer. Exhibit number 6, a printout of the screen shows the patient information leaflet of Rufinol, which shows its consequences and effects. But this is not all of the evidence that points to the defendant. While Officer Nelson was investigating in the defendant's bedroom, he noticed someone lurking in the shadows outside. When he went to go investigate, he found the person, whom he later identified as Alexis Toklas. The first words out of the defendant's mouth were, "You caught me." The officer observed that the defendant was wearing Birkenstocks. Remember that Ms. Beck testified that the person who passed out the drinks this year was wearing Birkenstocks. Remember that when Officer Nelson appeared to Drew upstairs, she was barefoot. And when the officer discovered the defendant outside, she was wearing Birkenstocks. Thus, it was the defendant who was wearing the mask and handing out the drinks on this fatal night. To prove the second element, that the natural consequences of Rufinol were dangerous to human life, exhibit number 6 shows that the defendant clearly knew the effects of Rufinol when mixed with alcohol. When mixed with alcohol, Rufinol can make you feel sleepy. If you fall very deeply asleep, this may cause serious problems with your breathing and heartbeat. Clearly, such effects of Rufinol are dangerous to human life, and in this case, prove fatal for Dana Dane. To prove the third element, that the defendant acted deliberately and with a conscious disregard for human life. Exhibit number 6 shows that the defendant researched the drug and therefore knew of its presence and knew the consequences of Rufinol when mixed with alcohol. To prove element number 4, at the time she acted, the defendant knew the consequences of Rufinol were dangerous to human life. Exhibit number 6 shows that the defendant researched the drug, therefore knew of its consequences and effects. The people are confident that you will find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter. However, if you find that there are not enough facts to support this count, we have also charged the defendant with involuntary manslaughter. In order for us, the people, to prove involuntary manslaughter, we must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following two elements. 1. That the defendant's act caused a high risk of death or great bodily injury. And 2. That the defendant's act unlawfully caused the death of another person. To prove the first element, that the defendant's act caused a high risk of death or bodily injury, Exhibit number 6 shows that the defendant's shows the effects of rufinol when mixed with alcohol. Rufinol can make you feel sleepy. It can cause serious problems with your breathing and heartbeat if you fall very deeply asleep. To prove the second element, that the defendant's act unlawfully caused the death of another person, Exhibit number 2, the autopsy report, shows that the defendant died due to the mixture of the drink with toxic drugs. The people have also charged the defendant with illegal administration of a controlled substance. In order for us, the people, to prove count 3, we must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following 4 elements. 1. That the defendant administered a controlled substance. 2. That the defendant knew of its presence. 3. That the defendant knew of the substance's nature or character as a controlled substance. And 4. That the controlled substance was flunitrazepam, also known as rufinol. To prove the first element, that the defendant administered a controlled substance, Exhibit number 1 shows that the fingerprints of the defendant were on both the pill bottle and the cup. To prove the second element, that the defendant knew of its presence, you have heard Ms. Beck testify that the defendant had a former roommate who ingested the drug, and Exhibit number 1 shows that the defendant's hand fingerprints were on the pill bottle, which shows that she personally handled the bottle of pills. To prove the third element, that the defendant knew of the substance's nature as a controlled substance, Exhibit number 6 shows that the defendant researched the drug, therefore knew as its nature as a controlled substance. To prove the fourth element, that the controlled substance was flunitrazepam, Exhibit number 1 recognizes the pill as flunitrazepam, also known as rufinol. Exhibit number 2 proves that it was rufinol in Dana's drink that caused her death. At the beginning of this trial, we said that we would prove the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and illegal administration of a controlled substance. The evidence has proven that the defendant disliked Dana and had an argument with Dana. Seeking revenge, she intentionally committed the act of placing the pill in the drink, which caused Dana's death. Dana died as a result of the defendant's conscious disregard for human life, and which turned this Halloween tradition deadly. Members of the jury, we ask that you return the only verdict supported by the facts and demanded by justice. We ask that you find the defendant, Alexis Toklas, guilty of voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and illegal administration of a controlled substance. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense argument.